Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Coin. I got the Roundup crew on the pod today. Hey, Rounduppers.
Hi,
Hey y'all.
ladies.
Okay, so we got Pam, we got Steph, we got Whit, and myself here. And these episodes are for us to talk about things that are going on in the greater financial space and then share a little bit about what's happening in our wallets. So I want to get right into it because we were starting to chat before the call and then we wanted to save it for our audience. So the first article we came across that is definitely worth speaking to is all about the Airbnb bans and general housing market. Obviously, a lot of women in the Factora community are either homeowners, future homeowners, or homeowners and investment property owners. So this is a big thing. And obviously, Steph is our resident real estate expert and founder of Open House Austin. So, talk to us, Steph, about what you are seeing in the Airbnb world.
Yeah, this is a hot topic because a lot of people have been making a lot of money on Airbnb. And we've seen huge drop offs in revenue, including myself, actually. Just because, that's kind of what this article was about. Like, why is this happening? Is Airbnb going to go under? Because when I feel my revenue dropping, I assume that Airbnb's revenue is dropping as well. But that's actually not the case. And it makes sense when you think of, okay, this is a really good strategy. A lot of people are employing it. There's so many Airbnbs on the market. It's so saturated. And so that is why revenue is dropping. I think bottom line, that's it. And then the bans, I mean, your city could essentially stop your business. So it's really wild to think that like you set this whole thing up, you furnished it, you bought it. That was your plan A. And when people's plan A fails, a lot of times they don't have a plan B or their costs are too much monthly for plan B to work. So this article was kind of exploring the idea of what if Airbnb busts and people are going to need to sell the properties that they bought specifically for Airbnb? Are we going to see a flood of inventory? Mm-hmm. I personally always have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. And so I have my properties broken up into different units. I have long-term units, I have short-term units. I personally will not need to sell anything due to the Airbnb revenue drop. However, it could happen and we could see a little bit of a bump in inventory. The thing is that inventory is already so low across the country. So if we get a bump in inventory, I don't think it's going to cause a crash. I've talked for so long, but what do you guys think?
Well, just before you stop talking, actually tell us how many Airbnbs you currently run today.
So I personally like the Airbnbs that I actually like use for my day-to-day income and like paying my mortgages and all of that I have 6 of them. And then my family business has 8. And they're all very small units. And so we don't do like the big Airbnb houses that are like 6 to 12 people where you're seeing like parties and loud things. It's more of a hassle than anything. So we have these little small units that actually fit 1 to 2 people. And we're not seeing like the huge drops in revenue, or we're not seeing like neighbors complaining. So like we're kind of in that market of the Airbnb, and we have probably seen a 20% drop overall in revenue from year over year. From not even last year, but the year before, we've probably seen 20% drop over those 2 years.
Does anyone else here have an Airbnb? Whitney, I know you do.
I do, and I've only had an Airbnb for the last year and a half, but I'm experiencing the same thing Steph is, where this year compared to last year, there has been a significant drop in revenue. Now, my there are bookings every weekend. However, this year the bookings tend to be Friday, Saturday night, whereas last year a lot of the bookings were like Thursday through Monday. So they're a lot shorter stays, which I think has to do with the broader economy. So, people just being cautious about their money, not optimistic maybe about keeping their job or their job market. But that has, led to a drop in revenue. Also, I've noticed a lot more Airbnbs coming on the market in our area. So
Mhm.
that hurts individual get or hosts because there's more choice. But as we mentioned earlier, it doesn't hurt Airbnb because they're still getting that revenue from a different property. So these fluctuations and these market regulations, they really have a large impact on the hosts over Airbnb, because I don't think there's going to be, right, this is not at the federal level. There's not going to be a total short-term market Airbnb ban. I mean, in fact, Arizona did the opposite. They're saying you cannot, no city, no county, you cannot ban any type of Airbnb. You can't put restrictions on it. Meanwhile, places in New York, they're getting much stricter. And I do think it's good that the regulations are left up to the local governments and the local communities, because those residents are the ones feeling the squeeze on cost of living. Because
Right.
you have the other side of it too, right? Like, as an Airbnb power user, as a guest, and an Airbnb host, I obviously love the product. I love the feature. It has helped me so much in my travels. It has given me subsequent income. But on a much larger scale, when people can't get into the housing market at all to buy a first-time home because a whole bunch of corporations and institutions have sucked those all up, like, we have an affordable housing crisis in this country, and it is a problem, and this situation is making it worse. So it's tough, we got both sides of the issue we're thinking about here.
Yeah. And I'm curious, Whit, in terms of what you've seen with your Airbnb, how much of it is one, there's increased competition, right? As more governments might, both sides of it, right? You have like Arizona who really wants to open it up, and then you have other states. But I also wonder how much of it is also return to office, if you're seeing those kind of like different stays, right? People used to stay Friday through Wednesday or whatever, and it's like you might still be working remotely and you have that flexibility, and you want to be in Austin, as an example, or traveling wherever, versus now that there is this big push to return to office and decrease some of that flexibility. People are maybe saying like, okay, I'll just keep it to a weekend trip.
Yeah.
Yep, that's definitely weighing into it.
I think so, but it's so interesting because you'd think that overall, if that were the case, Airbnb's revenue would be dropping and they're like exceeding their income goals.
Well,
So
I think interestingly enough, the revenue is exceeding like targets, but total bookings per night is not. So, or sorry, total bookings generally. So there is a part of me that wonders of like, if their revenue is meeting expectations or above targets, but nights booked is not, they're taking a bigger cut of hosts. So I don't know, Steph, Whit, if y'all have seen that happen with your own, like how are they able to have less bookings, but then also kind of maintain that revenue? So they, I know obviously they've started to think about other revenue sources, like you have like the Airbnb experiences and things like that. So they're definitely trying to make up for that somehow, either in charging hosts more or in just other revenue streams.
That's actually a
yeah.
great question. Whit and Steph, have you seen them start to charge more? Before I let you answer that, I used to have an Airbnb, but I saw the saturation in my East Austin neighborhood. I mean, directly, like 4 houses in a row put back carriage houses right after I did, and all put them on Airbnb. And quite frankly, theirs were a little cuter, so I get it. And so we took ours off and we flipped that property to a long-term rental about 2 years ago now. And I'm really glad we did for a few reasons. One, it's a headache even though we had a Airbnb management company, you still have to manage your management company, and there's stuff that goes wrong, and guests are mad, and it's going on your profile on Airbnb. And there's just a lot of moving parts when you're constantly stocking stuff. So I have really enjoyed flipping that to a long-term unit, which we only have long-term renters at this point, and it's pretty great. So I'm out of the game, basically. Are they charging you guys more? Have you seen any uptick in pricing?
So they charge the guest and they charge the host, right? They're capturing fees on either end. And yes, I think there has been a steady increase. It hasn't been like whoa, one day to the next it was like so much more, but I think that they just like steadily increase, and you can see what the guest pays versus what you get as their payout, and it is quite different. So it's frustrating to think that they're paying so much more than what you're actually getting. And it is tempting to be like, oh well, you should just have direct booking, but Airbnb does come with like the safety and structures of insurance and a third party to like help you resolve any conflict. And so it's really interesting. And so that could be the revenue increase versus nights booked. It could be prices are a little higher across the board. I'm not sure how that can happen though with saturation. So I would be interested to look into that a little bit deeper. But it is definitely saturated. Like you said, Allegra, like every other house has some sort of Airbnb component, which like you said, Whitney, is that good for our community? Like, is that good for the housing market, for the rental market, for like just affordability in general? It's definitely a question that I ask myself and like think about a lot. And I think the way that we do it, we really try to be conscious of like buying a house and having at least one component of it be long-term still, and then just like add spaces so that we're not taking up anything that existed before. We're actually adding units. We're adding a tiny home in the back. We're adding whatever, onto the house so that we're not taking up what would have been a long-term rental. But I do think that these giant houses that could otherwise be a home for someone who lives here, and they can make a lot more money on Airbnb. So it's a really, really tricky subject, but I do think the bans and the restrictions, regulations are a good thing across the board. I think it's positive when they are enacted and when they're enforced. That's the tricky part though. How to enforce? Are they being enforced? In Austin, they are not.
Because I no longer have this Airbnb, I don't mind telling y'all, mine was technically illegal. It was legal in that Austin requires the primary owner to live there. And I did live there because I lived in the front unit and there was a back unit, but I did not get the Airbnb, whatever it's called.
The permit or license.
The permit to do it. And, whatever. But that's an interesting point, Steph, that I guess I wasn't taking away. I was adding, because when we moved into that unit, there was not a back house. We created that so it was additional housing, or at least short-term vacation options for people who were coming to Austin. And Austin is obviously a hotspot. But I guess I do agree that it's super layered because America has housing shortages in popular cities and huge affordability issues for people getting started with their first homes, because if you remember, well, I don't know why you would, but in the Well Circle, we talk a lot about home prices in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and they could be afforded on a one member income. And now it's like it takes dual incomes. These prices are crazy expensive. If you're living close to city center, you're probably not getting a lot of yard space or even general interior square footage. So we're in a wild moment. But I also grew up only thinking that you could stay when you traveled with friends or in hotels. So this has been a game changer because, Whitney, correct me if I'm wrong, but predominantly your whole sabbatical has been spent in Airbnbs. So you are definitely a super user.
Yep. And I really don't think it's retail investors owning Airbnbs that are the issue here, right? Because in a lot of cases, they actually live at the property or they have a portfolio of maybe a handful. But I'm talking like private equity companies snagging up hundreds of houses in one community that literally sit empty unless, it's booked on a short-term rental site. Like, this is it's that kind of scale that I think is the problem here, really contributing to the affordability crisis, contributing to, or I guess I should say, diminishing communities in certain areas. Because also, as a a homestead owner, I want to live in a good community. I want to know my neighbors. I want to be able to call them and say, "Hey, can you bring in my garbage cans this week? I'm out of town." Or, "Do you want me to grab a package off of your porch?" Like, what will our communities look like if, the 5 houses to the left and right of us are just, transient
Yeah.
guests?
Yeah.
I'm personally very conflicted, right? Like, I'm a power user, I'm a host, and I also want community for my primary
Mhm.
home.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting situation to be in, but I have to say right now, I am overwhelmed by the crisis and thinking like, okay, how could we put enough regulations in place where we don't ruin people's livelihoods that are these retail investors who do own a small portfolio of
Yeah.
Airbnbs in some cases. Like, it's really their only source of income. This is how people are surviving. I don't want to take that away from people, but there needs to be some regulation on these institutions just buying up entire communities.
Yes, I think that that's a good point. And in Austin specifically, they've made it a lot easier for people to get a license if they actually live on the property, which I love because that is just a homeowner supplementing their mortgage that is way too high because houses are way too expensive. And that at my company Open House, we teach homeowners how to do that, how to like supplement their mortgage. We call it house hacking or sneaky duplex. And Airbnb is an incredible tool for that. But I agree. And even if it means that I need to convert some of mine back to long term, like I am 100% down for that. And my strategy, my plan, it works still with long term rental. And so it is like, I think I'm all for community building over everything else and making things more affordable. And I think it's like these regulations should be enforced. Like we should be okay with these things being enforced. And like they've been pretty successful in California and New York at really, really locking them down. But in more conservative states, it's hard because it's my property and I can do what I want.
Yeah. I think what I was going to say is like, it's interesting that we're talking about community because I do think that is one of the things that as Airbnb was coming out, whatever, a decade ago, probably more than a decade ago at this point, that was what was so appealing about doing an Airbnb was being in like the neighborhood that you were going to stay in. And as Airbnb becomes more saturated, it's like, do I want to do this versus maybe like do a hotel that has a few more amenities. And so I think maintaining that community piece where it's not just private equity firms own hundreds of Airbnbs and like you can just tell when you go to a street that's like all Airbnbs, like the vibes are just not good. And I think that is also like potentially decreasing demand as people are thinking about traveling.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. People are starting to have bad Airbnb experiences. You just know there isn't a real, like, whoever poses the host isn't really a human. They're just like an Airbnb short-term rental company with a photo that looks legit. So I guess question for you guys, are you staying in more hotels these days, or have you always been a hotel first? Or I guess what's your current experience using Airbnb? Pam.
I think now, I would say now I'm leaning more towards hotels if it's just like me and James, where it's just like us two, and I'm like, I want to like just, I don't want to have to worry about like coordinating check-in times and things like that. But I also like acknowledge that if we were traveling with like a family or like with multiple families, like an Airbnb where you're all sort of together, like that is also really nice. So I think for me, it's a little Depends on the situation. But if it's just like me and James, like I'll probably lean a little bit more towards hotels because quite frankly, because of increased fees, like it's starting to become more expensive than staying in a hotel. But I also over Labor Day went to the beach with some college friends, and we all stayed in a really big house that was, short-term rental managed by property management company, and like that was really nice as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, the group stays, it's a game changer. I mean, what a difference our lives are now that we can go and rent a whole house for our friends to go on vacation. But I do think that it's a variability. The variability of quality is huge. And so yeah, when it's me and Alan, I do prefer to stay in a hotel because it's just like you don't have to deal with anything. It's so nice. I love a hotel actually. So I do think that for specific, like, I mean, for my units specifically, like the 1 and 2 person Airbnb situations, units, it could see a large dip because of the quality variability. But I do think that my units are so much cheaper than a hotel. So like the price, like there's still going to be a market for it because not everyone can. The hotels are expensive. The fees are expensive. It's like, it's not a cheap stay. And when you can book my place for $99 plus a couple of fees, it's a more affordable route.
yeah.
What about you, Whit?
I have a hard time staying in a hotel for longer than 3 nights because I mean, I just, the food situation, like I want to have my own food. I want to be able to eat when I want. I want my water, the convenience of having a kitchen is just, it's too good. In addition to, washing machine, like longer than that, it's like I'm going to need to wash something. We don't travel with much, so we have to do laundry quite frequently. But we've had our fair share of surprises and issues, with certain Airbnbs getting canceled on last minute. Just, kind of unable to find places or not in the places we thought, or a little bit of false advertising, down to like smells like mold. I'm definitely inhaling mold in this house. I mean, so much can happen. So it's also nice to like stay in Airbnbs for a stretch and then be like, all right, we're going to take the weekend trip, pamper ourselves in a hotel, big comfy bed, plenty of clean towels. That's the other thing. Like, you don't really know how many towels the host is going to leave you.
Yeah.
In the kitchen, in the bathroom,
Mhm.
especially in Europe, they're more minimalistic. They're a little more practical than the U.S. So it's just a lot different there.
Well, I think that this article was definitely interesting, something that can inspire a lot of conversation around the future of Airbnb. I don't see it going anywhere. I think that they're a great marketplace. They double dip and get payment from both the host and the user. And I hope Airbnb will be around for years to come. But I definitely think that there is going to be a bit of a sling back where the quality is going to have to improve, or some people are just going to go off the market because people we won't stand for that for so long. For instance, I stayed at an Airbnb that I loved this summer, but I have to say they were so particular. I kind of thought twice about staying there again. It's like, I don't want to do absolutely everything. Like, I don't want to do all the laundry and make all the beds myself. That's kind of why I'm using this other space. But, they were a real family. And so anyways, it's nuanced, it's personal preference, and we'll see what happens with Airbnb.
But with all good things, the pendulum swings, right? And I think we're in the process of it. It's swinging the other way, and then it's going to find its equilibrium in the middle. And I don't know how long that'll take, but that's the transition I feel we're in right now.
Totally.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about girl math, y'all. We read an article that said title was "Girl Math may not be smart financial advice, but it could help women feel more empowered with money." And I don't know about you, but I didn't even like reading the title. And then surprisingly, I actually liked the article. So let me just read the beginning so our listeners know what girl math is. So if you've ever calculated cost per wear to justify the price of an expensive dress or felt like you've made a profit after returning an ill-fitting pair of jeans, you might be an expert in girl math. With videos about the topic going viral on social media, girl math might seem like a silly or even sexist trend, but it actually tells us a lot about the relationship between gender, money, and emotions. Girl math introduces a spend classification system, meaning purchases below a certain value or made in cash maybe don't even count. So psychologically, this makes low value spending feel safe and emphasizes the importance of the long-term value derived from more expensive items. For example, girl math tells us that buying an expensive dress is only quote unquote worth it if you can wear it to multiple events. And then they went so far as to compare this approach in similarity to portfolio theory, a method of choosing investments to maximize expected returns and minimize risk. By evaluating how each purchase contributes to the shopping portfolio, the article went on to say girl math shoppers are essentially becoming shopping portfolio managers. So who wants to kick it off with your commentary on girl math, taking the internet by storm?
I love girl math. I think we were all talking a little bit before this, but like I feel like we've all used girl math for forever. I do believe that like if I have like $20 in cash, like that is free money because one, nobody uses cash anymore. So to be honest, I don't even know where the $20 came from. So I couldn't even like point to that in my budget. So I really like it. But I do think it's sort of an interesting, it talks about this being defined as girl math. So I think it's just something interesting to think about in terms of like, do women, in society feel more pressure to sort of justify their spending? And there does seem to be like we know why that might be the case, but also when you think about like the wage gap, the investing gap, like yeah, you're maybe having to be a little bit more thoughtful or just kind of try to think through like, is this something that is worth it? I also think Allegra, the piece that you read about low value spending makes me think of some of the things that we talk about in Factora, which is just like this like quote unquote latte factor, like your $7 oat milk latte that like I get without a care, like that's not really what's driving the issue around wealth inequality between men and women. And so like I do think there is something to this idea of does spending $5 here and there, like should that really count? Anywho, so I'm a big fan of girl math. I've been using it for a long time, and I think it's fun.
We didn't even know we were using it, but we were. Like
Yeah,
every time
we've all been using it because that line about is the dress worth it? I can't tell you how many times I've seen a dress and thought, how many weddings can I wear that to? And does that friend group know that friend group? So if it's in the photos, will they even see before I go to that wedding next year and this one later this fall? Like that can go through my brain like an absolute cash register so fast. I can't even. And then I just wanted to comment on cash stashing. My husband is like, where did this money come from? He's always opening up a bag or a purse of mine and being like, you have $40 in here. Where'd you get it? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's go out.
I know. I do think that the explanation in this article is so funny because it does make it sound so serious. Like we have really thought this out and these are rules in a spreadsheet that we really go by, but it's like it is a meme, right? The memification of this whole like spending habits of women. It's cool because every single person relates, right? Like we do this, but like it's not like a system that we're going by religiously. It's not like this is our strategy for spending or investing. And so I hope that no one's like, oh my God, those dumb girls. I think that's where this like sexist spin on it is. It's like, that's so unserious. Like, of course girls would be doing that because girls don't know about money, and that's just like not it for me. It's like, no, I bought the tickets to this concert and now this concert is free. That's it.
That was one of the examples. If you buy early concert tickets, because obviously, earlier you buy the cheaper and then they raise the price as you get closer. And so that was funny. But then when they were talking about how on TikTok people will call in and say, I bought front row Taylor Swift tickets for whatever. I don't know how much. I'm not a Swiftie, so I don't know how much they are, but thousands of dollars. And then the person will say, but this, and this is going to happen, and you're going to be this much happier, and blah, 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 blah. So it's free. So, like, you didn't really spend it. That is, I think, what people are patronizing and saying
right
more than it is already said. Women don't spend appropriately or thoughtfully or smart, but this is a joke. So I think the joke is funny, and there's something serious to it because we all just said we do girl math.
Yeah. I mean, the name of it is a trend, right? Like girl math as a concept, like it's trendy. It's supposed to be cute, catchy, but realistically, I think we've all used girl math forever, right? Especially us money-focused women. I one of my specific examples that is coming to mind is lift tickets, and they're so expensive, right? I would calculate like, okay, how many runs can I get in on this lift ticket to just like equate like, was this day at the slopes worth it?
I'm glad you said slopes because I was sitting here being like, what's a lift ticket? Thinking like it was a monthly Uber subscription. Yeah. Okay. Skiing.
All right,
Got
okay.
it.
For my non-skiers, I'm talking about, going to the mountains, going skiing, lift tickets have gotten so ridiculously expensive. So then I started being like, okay, how many runs can I go down? How can I make this lift ticket worth it? Because I'm not much of a clothes person, so cost per wear, isn't my thing. But I think that resonates a lot for women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, if I wear, $100, jacket 5 times, okay, like that makes it worth it. So I do think as a concept, it is good in a way because it is getting women and general. I don't think just women do this. I know men do this too with certain things, golf clubs and what, like if I can use these for 10 years, men do it too. So I do think it's good in a way that it's getting people to really think about their purchases, and it's like the start of a values-based spending system. But it is a flawed concept, right? Because it's like, well, this effective, like this whole concept has to be thought of before the purchase. You can't purchase it and then justify it with girl math, and I think that's when it gets a bad rap, right? But if it is being used before the purchase, okay, now we're being very thoughtful about our money. But it is flawed, especially in experiences, because if you're familiar with like sunk costs, it's so okay. So say you bought those Taylor Swift tickets, say you went and you got super sick or you're having a horrible time or like something's on your mind and you're like, but I can't leave. I have to stay through the whole thing, or this investment in this ticket wasn't worth it. Well, it's a sunk cost, right? Like, why would you torture yourself to stay longer? Like, you don't get a refund. You don't get a partial refund. So there's that too. Like, why continue to wear something to get that cost of wear per down if you hate the outfit, if it's uncomfortable, if it's itchy? Like, it doesn't make
I
sense.
think
So
it is like a platform with which to talk, not even platform, just like it is a structure with which to talk about money psychology, because we are all constantly thinking about stuff like this. We're at the Taylor Swift concert and we're miserable, but we can't leave because, or else we've wasted money, and wasting money is painful. It like doesn't feel good. One of our friends just got scammed on Facebook for a Drake ticket, and it doesn't feel good. Like that is the worst feeling ever. Like you've been taken advantage of, or that you've wasted money. And so it's just a fascinating. I'm so glad it's trending, because then we can really talk about what Factora talks about, which is values-based spending. And if you wanted to go to the Taylor Swift concert. Well, for me, it's Beyonce, let's be honest. And I'm about to drop a lot of money to go to Beyonce. And I want to because I love Beyonce and she is my Super Bowl. She is my queen, like I'm going to spend a lot of money because that's my values. And I hate to bring a man into this, but Ramit's like rich life, we talk about Ramit's theories in this household so often because that is what money is for, is to make your life better and to enrich it and to make it easier or whatever your values are.
So I love a lot of what Ramit teaches, and I do love his rich life. Like, what are your rich life? Don't, not do these. One of his is like always get the appetizer because he wasn't able to do that growing up. But we are talking, because we're all Factora women and wealth building aficionados, about values. And where I think that the issue happens a lot is when girl math says investment. And nothing is an investment if you can't get a return on it. So if we could just stop saying that, like if you value Swift, Beyonce, the slopes, great, buy that thing, enjoy that thing. But it's not an investment. Like it's a fun, cool experience or item that you want to.
It's an expense to spend.
Yes.
And that's okay, right? When you're from
it's so okay.
Yeah.
I feel like in Factora, we're constantly giving women permission. We're like, yes, if you want that, get it. But what is something that you don't want, that you spend on, that you already feel guilty because it's not in line with your values? Stop doing that. Like take that money and actually put it in your investments.
You just hit the nail on the head there, where another reason girl math is a little flawed is because it leaves out the opportunity cost factor. Like, because you're spending on this, you are not spending on this. Or because I didn't spend on this, I could spend on this completely guilt-free.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, it's like it's so close to being an introduction to values-based spending and thinking through opportunity costs and saying, heck yeah, I just spent a lot of money on Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and all the things that come with it, merch, a dinner out beforehand, whatever. But that's exactly what I designated this money for, and I don't need to go back and do girl math and justify how many hours or this and that I spent there.
Well, I think the big issue is that we get these terms and they're so cute and easy to use, girl math and girl guilt, right? Like this guilt feeling around spending. But I think that all of that can be like it doesn't even matter. It's useless content as long as we actually have taken the time to set up the right accounts, the right financial system for ourselves. And then you can not feel guilty. I think some of these women or girl math purchases might feel bad because they're doing this big purchase for that experience that they want, and that's fine. But they're not also doing the emergency fund and the debt reduction and the investing that they should be doing likely first, but at least in tandem with those expenses.
Yes, I think that defining what an investment is very important. And what Factora does so well is helps people to derive joy from money when money has caused so much pain. Like the only thing we relate to money is anxiety, is frustration, is lack. It's, all of these gross feelings. And so we do have to justify, like, okay, it's fine because like I paid for it a while ago and it's free now. But like, you're right, Whitney, like that, it shouldn't be just in retrospect justification. It should be a very deliberate, my money is being so well employed because I know how to use it from Factora, that this $2,000 Taylor Swift ticket is purely deriving joy. I'm not justifying it. I'm just like so excited and then I'm moving on.
I feel like I need to do a reel on the definition of investing, what it is, what it isn't, and that joy is amazing. Let's get joy from our money. And let me tell you how joyous it is to look at your accounts and see that they are all full and getting more full. There is nothing that's going to bring you more joy than knowing you are financially stable. But let's quickly go around because we have to wrap this episode and just talk about what's happening in our wallets. For me, I have no updates. So what are you up to, Whitney?
Because my income is a little sporadic right now since I'm on my sabbatical or reverse retirement or semi-retirement, whatever you want to call it. I had turned off my automations, my contribution automations, just to be safe. And so I realized, oh, I haven't invested in my HSA, my health savings account, yet this year. And I had a big bill come in, or a big payment come in from one of my consulting contracts. And I was like, oh, perfect. That's going all to maxing out my HSA. So I did that last week.
That must feel good. What's the HSA max this year?
3,800.
We love to see it. What are you doing, Steph?
Well, I'm actually talking to you on the day of our new office launch, which we just spent so much money on. And that's, basically right now, the theme of my money is hemorrhaging. And we will be shored up, which is just like a funny and interesting time for me to have done this. But this is the last day that we're doing anything on the office. So office will be shored up by this evening. And then we have an appraisal on Monday for another property that we've also been hemorrhaging money on. So my theme right now is hemorrhage. And then on Monday, it is regrowth.
I love it. Can you tell us how much you spent on your office reno?
I think I was actually I overestimated, but I think we spent about $120,000.
Well,
on a rental.
I know that kills you, but it looks so good. Can't wait to get to the party.
Yes.
Pam, what are you doing in your wallet?
For me, I feel like it is just simplifying. I think kind of slowly over time, you either accumulate credit cards for like bonuses and points, and then you accumulate 5 employer 401ks. And what I've been kind of doing over the past 2 or so months is like really looking at which cards I'm using, which ones I don't need to be using. Like I don't need to have purchases spread out over like 5 cards just to get 3% cash back or whatever. Like I want to like really simplify that. Have been rolling over 401ks. One kind of newish thing I've started to test out is trying to curb impulse shopping on Amazon, which is really easy to do. And I just realized I was always in our budgeting system. I was always trying to input like, what did I spend $100 on Amazon on Monday and then like $20 on Tuesday and things like that. So I've started to implement only putting stuff in the cart and only checking out once per week. So at the most per month, having 4 transactions that I really know that's what I needed from Amazon or whatever that may be.
Good system.
That was the best part of this episode because I'm about to employ that today in my household.
Yeah. I know. It gets out of control. So anywho, we'll report back how it works. And yeah, Allegra, if you implement it, tell me how it works for you.
I love that. I as you were saying, and I thought you were going to say that you only buy it once a month, but that wouldn't be feasible for me because with a kid, like she's got a diaper rash and like I need that soon. So, well, this was a great roundup episode, y'all. Thanks. And I'll talk to you soon.
Hey,
bye
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, come join us in a Well Circle. It's our live, online, 12-week course and community where we teach you how to create a personalized financial plan alongside hundreds of other women building wealth. It will change your life and your money for good. You can apply at factorawealth.com/wealth circle. That's factorawealth.com/wealth circle. See you in the next episode.